A few months ago when EA announced the manager market was going to be in FC26, I think a lot of people, including myself, were very excited to see how it works. The prospect of managers being able to move between clubs, managers changing the style of the clubs that they manage, and just a better way of finding new jobs for yourself makes this one of the most important additions a manager mode game could possibly have. But does it actually work? And if it does work, how exactly can you guarantee you'll get that job that you want? Well, that's what we're going to be looking at today, trying to figure out if this system actually works, and also how to make the most of it in your next FIFA Career Mode save. So let's begin our dive into the manager market by first trying to figure out how the AI decides who to hire as their own managers. One of the most surprising things I found while researching for this video is that every single manager has some hidden values that we didn't know about. Not only does every manager have a contract start date, which is probably in there just so they don't move a couple of months after they just joined a club, but they also have a hidden domestic prestige which works the exact same way as clubs do, a profitability rating, and a star rating. Now the star rating is obviously going to be the rating that is used when finding managers new clubs, but I don't think that's the only thing that matters, but surely it's the most important by far, right? Well, EA has decided this year there are only 8 managers in the entire game who are 5-star rated. If we simulate 5 years and look at what clubs they're at, you can see they're all managing very good teams. If we take a 0.5-star manager like Owen Coyle, who of course used to manage in the Premier League but is one of the worst managers on the game, they're not at such a great club. So that's probably the main way that an AI managed team decides who to get as their manager. But it's a little bit more complicated to figure out how to get them to hire you. That's why I've split the rest of this video to answer 3 different questions. The first, does your manager rating matter? Does the league you're in matter? And do performances in that league matter? Well, let's start with the first one. Does your manager rating matter? That's this green bar that's at the top of your screen. If that's full, it means you're doing a good job and probably meeting most of your objectives, so you should be wanted by teams at a similar level to the one that you're currently managing at. The good news is that that is actually the case. If you have a low manager rating, not only are you at risk of getting sacked, but it is also a lot harder to find jobs that are better than the one you're currently at. You can still move clubs if you really want to, but if you have a high manager rating instead, then clubs that are better than the one you're at will start to be interested about 6 months after you've joined your previous team. I'm so glad that this works, because if it didn't, then the game mood would be kinda pointless. However, it does also make the game a little bit strange when you don't have objectives turned on. If you're playing on no sacking, then your manager rating does go up and down based on performances, but there's no big way to guarantee you're going to get a high one other than just winning more matches, which is a little bit strange. Anyway, the league that you're in also kind of matters, but not really because of the league. If you put Real Madrid in Ireland, you'll still get offers from really good teams. But if you put Cork City in La Liga, you'll still only be able to move to like Romania, Poland or China. And that's because instead of using the league or any system tied to that, it actually uses your club's domestic and international prestige values instead. Again, these are hidden, but they change for every single club, and they are quite easy to find online if you just search it on Google. Last year, we saw they were a big deal when it came to simulating matches, but it looks like they're an even bigger deal when it comes to the manager market. If your club has a really high domestic prestige rating, you're going to get offers from other clubs with a similar or slightly higher or slightly lower prestige rating instead. That means that it's really hard to jump from somewhere like Cork straight to Manchester United unless somehow you can get their domestic prestige up to a similar level as Manchester United. The final question we wanted to answer was, do performances and style of play actually matter to get a job? Well, they do, kind of. If you have your game style set to long ball or kick and rush, you're not going to find it easy to get a tiki-taka job. The opposite isn't true though. If you're a tiki-taka kind of manager, constantly having possession of the ball, you can get an offer from a long ball team. I think this is EA's way of trying to show that clubs around the world are trying to become more progressive with how they play, even though the opposite is actually kind of true in real life at the moment. So yes, overall your playstyle and your performances on the pitch do actually matter when it comes to getting better jobs. I think the manager market overall is a really cool system that does finally allow us to do cool stuff like proper journeyman careers where we travel around the world every few seasons. In fact, EA probably agrees with me because they've actually added a manager live challenge called Journeyman where you can spend 2 years at each club, the manager market is locked on and you have to try and win the 5 biggest leagues in Europe. So, Now we found out the system works, but is the system flawless? I don't think that it is. If you've played more than a few seasons, you'll have seen something like Thomas Frank downgrading from Spurs to Burnley, or Pep Guardiola moving to Atletico Madrid, who play a totally different style to him, or Xabi Alonso swapping to be Barcelona manager, while Hansi Flick somehow becomes Real Madrid manager. It is a little bit of a shame there's not more realism when it comes to the moves themselves, but like I've spoken about when I've talked about transfers, I don't think that career mode is actively trying to be realistic. Instead, it just wants like a dynamically changing world with lots of fun things going on that could happen in real life. Of course, there is also the option to turn the manager market off if you're not a fan of the moves. But if you do turn manager transfers off, you can probably guess what happens. Thanks to EA's brilliant logic, managers will still make the same transfers, but you can't move. The manager market tab disappears, so you can't keep track of anything, so just why give us the option to turn it off if it's still happening in the background? I think the final thing we need to talk about when we're talking about the manager market is some of the random managers that can just appear. EA actually sprinkles some different ratings in for these guys too. If you ever see a random female manager managing Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool or Real Madrid, then the chances are EA's just spawned a manager with 5-star manager rating. By default, 2 of the 8 managers we've talked about have 5-star ratings and are female. These 2 managers are Serena Weigmann, who is the England national team manager, and Sonia Bompastor, who is the Chelsea manager, as well as a FIFA Ultimate Team icon. I guess EA is probably trying to be progressive when they do this, because they think it's about time we see a female manager in the Premier League, but I can't see that happening within the next 15 years, which of course is how long every career mode save stands for. I know EA has sparked a lot of interest in the women's game thanks to Ultimate Team. I mean, I wouldn't have known who Claudia Pina was without it, but I think they're a little bit premature with the crossover of female managers into the men's game. I think this should probably be an option you can turn off. In fact, the whole system is a little bit weird when it comes to spawning new managers. There's a pretty even split, 50-50, between men and women managers, and you can see caretakers or random fake managers taking over clubs you probably wouldn't expect pretty early in their career. I really think there needs to be some kind of improvement system here, so these managers maybe spawn at 1 to 2 stars and can eventually work their way up to being 5 stars if they're really successful. So yeah, I think the best thing to do is take some of the manager moves with a pinch of salt and enjoy the fact that clubs will change their style of play, managers will show up in different places, and you don't have to look at an 88-year-old Claudio Ranieri managing Watford for the past 15 years in the year 2040. Overall, it makes a change for me to be making a video about an EA feature that actually works, but it's one that I actually really enjoy, and I'm glad it was added to the game this year. Hopefully you'll also see the benefit of it in your saves, and it'll help things feel less stale long term, which has always been a problem in longer career mode saves. But thank you for watching. Let me know if you've seen any weird manager transfers in your saves in the comments below, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, cheers, and goodbye.